Have you ever stopped to think that in only 73 seconds, a dream that took decades to build can simply vanish? 73 seconds. That was all it took to separate hope from tragedy, to turn national euphoria into absolute silence. A silence that, on January 28, 1986, echoed not only across the United States, but throughout the entire world. The sound of the Challenger explosion still seems to vibrate in the memories of those who lived that day, and even now, it remains one of the most heartbreaking and unforgettable moments in the history of space exploration. You're watching 5 Things and Facts. If you love mysteries, real stories, and moments that changed humanity forever, make sure to like and subscribe, because what's coming next will make you see space in a completely different way. That cold Florida morning looked far too peaceful to hide what was about to happen. Thousands gathered near the Kennedy Space Center. Families waved flags, reporters set up cameras, and among the crowd were schoolchildren waiting to see their teacher, Krista McAuliffe, make history as the first civilian ever to travel into space. She wasn't a trained astronaut. She was a teacher, a mother, and a symbol of something beautiful, the idea that space belonged to everyone. But no one realized that this symbol of hope was seconds away from becoming a symbol of loss. The story of the Challenger began long before that countdown. It went back to the 1970s, when the United States was still celebrating its victory in the space race. The new Space Shuttle program promised a reusable spacecraft that could fly frequently and cheaply, turning spaceflight into routine. It was meant to be a bridge between Earth and the cosmos, but the rush to prove success created a chain of risky compromises, and Challenger would soon pay the ultimate price. The shuttle itself was not new. It had flown 9 successful missions. To the public, it looked reliable. Inside NASA, though, engineers had long been worried about something small, a rubber seal called an O-ring in the joints of the solid rocket boosters. Those rings were designed to keep fiery gases from leaking out during liftoff. But there was a catch. When the temperature dropped too low, the rings lost flexibility. On that morning, Cape Canaveral's air measured 2 degrees below 0 Celsius, the coldest ever recorded for a crewed launch. While technicians debated a delay, pressure was mounting. The mission had already been postponed several times, and millions were waiting to watch. Canceling again felt impossible. Krista McAuliffe had appeared on national TV. Classrooms were ready to tune in to her lesson from orbit. Inside Morton Thiokol, the company that built the boosters, one engineer named Roger Boisjoli pleaded with his managers, "If you launch in this cold, we could lose the vehicle and the crew." But his warning was drowned by deadlines and politics. 7 astronauts boarded the shuttle, unaware that their fate was already sealed. Krista McAuliffe, the teacher; Francis Scobie, the commander; Michael Smith, the pilot; Judith Resnick, electrical engineer; Ellison Onizuka, flight specialist; Ronald McNair, physicist and jazz musician; Gregory Jarvis, payload engineer. Each of them carried the same spark in their eyes, the spark of people who truly believe in the impossible. At 11:38 a.m., the final countdown began. 10, 9, 8. The engines roared through the cold air. Challenger rose, leaving a white trail across the clear blue sky. For 73 seconds, everything looked perfect. Controllers in Houston reported, "Altitude nominal. All systems go." Then, everything changed. At 11:39 and 50 seconds, a tiny orange glow appeared on the right booster. A leak, a tongue of fire where there should have been none. In seconds, the flame began burning through a critical joint. It pierced the main fuel tank. And then, in front of thousands of onlookers and live television cameras, Challenger disintegrated in mid-air. What followed was a silence the world had never known. Parents clutched their children. Reporters froze mid-sentence. The NASA announcer's voice cracked. "It appears now we may have a problem." Fragments of the shuttle rained into the Atlantic Ocean. The smoke split into 2 trails, drifting apart like broken wings. Rescue teams rushed out, but there was nothing left to save. For months, the world asked, had the crew died instantly? Investigators later learned the crew cabin had remained intact for a few seconds after the breakup. Switches had been flipped. Oxygen masks triggered. For a few eternal seconds, They were alive, fully aware they were falling. Inside NASA, chaos and guilt collided. The frozen O-ring was the spark, but the real cause ran deeper. Culture, pride, and silence. Warnings were ignored, safety reports softened to fit political schedules. NASA had wanted to make space travel look routine, but that illusion cost 7 lives. A presidential commission was formed, the Rogers Commission. Among its members was physicist Richard Feynman, a Nobel Prize winner. During a live hearing, he performed a simple yet devastating experiment. He placed a small O-ring into a glass of ice water. Minutes later, it stiffened completely. "Reality must take precedence over public relations," he said calmly, "for nature cannot be fooled." That sentence hit harder than any explosion. It exposed a truth no one wanted to face. The failure wasn't just mechanical, it was human. Schools paused their lessons in Krista's honor. President Ronald Reagan addressed the nation, saying the crew slipped the surly bonds of Earth to touch the face of God. The world wept. And behind the tears, engineers, scientists, and administrators wrestled with shame. For months, recovery teams searched the Atlantic. They brought up 30 tons of debris, including the crew cabin, still largely intact. Inside, instruments showed desperate human attempts, emergency switches engaged, oxygen handles pulled, traces of courage against the inevitable. The shuttle program was grounded for nearly 3 years. No American astronauts would fly again until 1989. Humanity's relationship with space had changed forever, no longer pure excitement, but respect mixed with fear. Yet from tragedy came transformation. Safety would never again be an afterthought. Every bolt, every seal, every system would be tested as if lives depended on it, because they did. There's also the part most people never hear, the human one. Families of the crew watched from the grandstands. Husbands, wives, and children looked on proudly. Among them was 9-year-old Scott McAuliffe, Krista's son. His gaze at the sky in that moment, captured by cameras, became one of the most haunting images in American history. The instant a child saw his hero disappear. But the story didn't end there. 17 years later, in 2003, another shuttle, Columbia, broke apart during re-entry. The similarities were chilling: ignored warnings, technical arrogance, blind confidence. Challenger's lessons had faded too soon. Even so, the legacy of those 7 astronauts lived on. Schools were named after them, scholarships founded in their honor, and decades later, civilian spaceflight returned, this time under private companies like SpaceX. The Inspiration mission was dedicated to that same spirit of exploration, but now with safety as sacred law. Few people know this. Before liftoff, Krista McAuliffe recorded a short message for her students. "Look up at the sky," she said. "When you see the stars, remember, one of them is us." Those words, never meant as farewell, became the poetic echo of a generation's lost innocence. Challenger became more than a spacecraft. It became a symbol, a reminder that progress always walks a narrow path between courage and recklessness. And yet, it also proved something timeless. Even when bodies fall, ideas keep rising. Today, the Challenger disaster stands not only as one of the darkest days in space exploration, but also as one of the most defining. It reshaped what it means to risk everything for discovery. If you made it this far, congratulations. Hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell, because the next story will blow your mind. And what if I told you there are places on Earth where time itself runs slower? Is it myth or science? I'll see you in the next video.